In December of 1799, the most powerful man in America woke in the middle of the night and found he could barely breathe. Over the next 12 hours, the three best doctors in the country came to his bedside and did everything their training told them to do. Most of it involved draining the blood out of his body. By the time it was over, George Washington, who had survived a war, smallpox, and more than one bullet, was dead. And it wasn't really the illness that killed him, it was the treatment. I'm a vascular surgeon, and this is the story of how the best medicine of its day helped kill the father of a country, and why that death ended up shaping the way we practice now. Everything here comes from the doctor's own written record of that night, and from the modern analyses that have tried to reconstruct it. I want to show you what was actually wrong with his throat, why bleeding him looked like the obvious move, and how one young doctor in that room understood the real problem and got shouted down for it. Mostly though, this is a story about the most dangerous urge a physician can have, the need to do something. It starts on the 12th of December. Washington, 67 and retired to his estate at Mount Vernon, spends hours in the saddle riding his land in cold rain that turns to snow. He comes home soaked and sits down to dinner without changing out of the wet clothes. By the following evening, his throat is sore, and in the small hours of the 14th, he wakes his wife. He can hardly swallow, and every breath has become work. Something in his throat is closing. Here's what a doctor today thinks was happening inside him. The best modern reading of the case, published in the New England Journal of Medicine, is acute bacterial epiglottitis, an infection of the small flap of tissue at the base of the tongue that stands guard over the airway. Once it's infected, it swells, and it can keep swelling until it plugs the windpipe like a cork in a bottle. Washington wasn't dying of a sore throat. He was suffocating slowly, and nothing his doctors reached for came anywhere near the real problem. What they reached for was blood. Before a single physician had arrived, Washington had an overseer on the estate, a man named Rollins, open a vein. Understand that this wasn't panic, and it wasn't quackery. Bleeding a sick patient was the most respected idea in Western medicine, and had been for the better part of 2,000 years. So Rollins, working by candlelight, cut into his master's arm and let the blood run into a bowl, and Washington, watching it pool, told him not to be shy about it. Take more. Then the doctors came. 3 of them, James Crack, his personal physician and a friend of 40 years, Gustavus Brown, and the youngest of the 3, Elisha Cullen Dick. They set to work with the full kit of the year 1799. They raised blisters on his skin with caustic paste to draw the illness outward. They dosed him with calomel, a mercury compound, to empty his bowels. They made him gargle a mixture that nearly choked him where he sat, and gave him something to bring up his stomach. And through the day, again and again, they bled him. Let me put the numbers in surgical terms because they are staggering. In roughly 12 hours, they took more than 80 ounces of blood out of him, somewhere close to 2.5 liters. That's near enough 40% of everything in his circulation. Draining that much, that fast, does one thing very reliably. It drops the body into shock. The heart gallops over nothing. The pressure falls away. The organs begin to starve. They were treating a suffocating man by bleeding him until he was hollow. Every draw left him weaker, and not one of them did a thing for his airway. This is the moment a surgeon can't read without flinching, because somebody in that room saw it clearly. Elisha Cullen Dick, the youngest doctor there, argued against the last heavy bleeding. And he raised an idea that in 1799 bordered on radical. Open the windpipe below the blockage, a tracheotomy, and let the man breathe through the opening. Think about what that tells you. Dick had grasped the actual problem, The enemy was the shut airway, not some imbalance in the blood. Get past the obstruction, and you buy time for the infection to settle. Of everything proposed in that room, his was the one plan aimed at what was truly killing the patient. And the two senior men, loyal to the doctrine of bleeding, told him no. The right answer was spoken out loud by the most junior voice present, and rank overruled it. Washington himself seems to have understood before any of them did. He told the doctors to stop, to let him go. "I die hard," he said, "but I am not afraid to go." He stayed calm. He gave instructions. He was so wary of the era's habit of burying people before they were truly gone that he asked to be left unburied for 3 days. And then, late on the 14th of December, he stopped breathing, and the strongest man in America was gone, a bowl of his own blood going cold beside the bed. It would be easy to call these men butchers, and it would also be wrong. They weren't fools, and they weren't careless. Bleeding was the standard of care, taught in the finest schools and practiced by the most respected names in medicine, with roots running all the way back to the ancient Greeks. The logic even held together on its own terms. If disease was a corruption or an excess in the body's fluids, then letting the fluid out was the remedy. They did exactly what their science told them to do, carefully, on a man they loved. The problem wasn't malice. It was an entire profession, sincere and certain of itself, working inside an idea that happened to be false, with no way to check whether any of it worked at all. That last piece is the whole point, and it's where a death from 1799 reaches into your life right now. Because how do you ever find out that a treatment everyone swears by does nothing? You count. Barely 37 years after Washington died, a doctor in Paris named Pierre Louis did something quietly revolutionary. He took a large group of pneumonia patients, some bled and some not, and simply compared how many lived. The tally said bleeding wasn't saving them. It was one of the first times medicine held its own faith up against arithmetic, and it's remembered now as one of the seeds of what we call evidence-based medicine. Every clinical trial, what does the data actually show? Every time your own doctor pauses before prescribing, a lot of it traces back to 2,000 years of confident men bleeding patients they were sure they were helping, while nobody thought to go and count the graves. There's a last turn in this that I find almost poetic. Taking blood out of a person is not in itself a mistake. We still do it, but only for a small handful of conditions where it genuinely helps. If you carry hemochromatosis, a disorder that loads the body with too much iron, the treatment is to remove blood on a schedule. Some diseases that push your red cell count too high, the same. The very act that emptied a president is, in the right patient and the right dose, precisely the right thing to do. What separated poison from cure was never the knife or the bowl. It was knowing when to use them. That's the lesson tucked inside a dying man's bedroom. The urge to do something, to intervene hard, to act when a patient is slipping away, is one of the most dangerous instincts in all of medicine, and it never left. You can still find it today in the extra scan, the extra pill, the operation done because standing still feels unbearable. Washington's doctors have a warning for every physician who has ever felt that pull. And it's the oldest rule we've got. First, do no harm. If you want to see what happens to the doctor who gets the right answer too soon, the way Dick did, ignored in that room, there's a man on this channel who was locked in an asylum for telling other doctors to wash their hands. His story is already here. Watch it next.